Hello, everyone, and welcome to our professional development series for grades 3 through 12, step-by-step foundational supports, LIFT. And so LIFT stands for Literacy Interventions and Foundational Tools. And this is session 4. Session 4, we're going to be talking about administering the phonemic and phonological awareness probe. And this is our last session in the first half of this, because next week we'll be starting on our content literacy series. So we're so excited about that. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Natalie Kleber, and my role here at the department is middle school and high school literacy PD specialist. So let's dive in. So we have two objectives today. The first one is to be able to explain the purpose of a phonological and phonemic awareness inventory and how to administer one to struggling readers. And then secondly, determine targeted next steps for students from the phonological and phonemic awareness inventory. So our agenda is we're going to do a quick review of last session. We're going to talk about the purpose of that inventory, how to administer it, and then once you get the results, intervening on phonological and phonemic awareness skills, next steps, and then a closure. So we've been talking about LIFT the last couple of weeks, and LIFT stands for, again, Literacy Interventions and Foundational Tools. And LIFT allows teachers to diagnose what gaps may exist for students in foundational areas such as fluency, code knowledge, phonics, and then phonemic and phonological awareness, which is where we're going today. Diagnosing gaps in reading foundations is an important first step in supporting students who are struggling to read or master grade level content. And LIFT provides the diagnostic assessment as well as a library of over 70 interventions to use with students once gaps have been identified. And just know that we are constantly adding to this intervention library as we go, continuing to build it. So we talked about the foundational skills code knowledge inventory in our last session. And we said that the code knowledge inventory assesses students' ability to decode, to be able to read, to match these letters and sounds for the purposes of reading, and to encode, to match the letters and sounds for the purposes of spelling. So they hear the sound and they write the spelling pattern. For students who are not able to read with sufficient fluency to support comprehension, there are often significant gaps in knowledge of basic and advanced phonetic code. And this code we keep referring to refers to the many different graphemes or spellings for each of the 44 different phonemes or sounds in the English language. Pinpointing gaps in code knowledge is an effective way for the teachers to identify where they should provide additional support for students in third grade and beyond. And it will also assess where deficits occur for students scoring below that 50th percentile on the fluency. So let's talk about new content this week. And so first of all, I think it's important for us to talk about what phonological and phonemic awareness even is. This series was developed with upper elementary, middle school, and high school in mind. And so especially in middle and high school, we don't often use these terms. So let's talk about really what they mean because they're very important to today's session. So phonology is the sound system. It's the awareness of speech sounds. And phonology we kind of refer to as an umbrella, and there's some things that happen underneath that umbrella. So phonological awareness is the awareness and access to the sound structure of a language. It's using these speech sounds to code information while reading, speaking, and listening. So we might ask a student, these are mostly kindergarten skills, we might ask a student to tell me how many words they hear in a sentence, or how many syllables they hear in a word, or to match rhymes. This is another sound activity. And so for phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, we often refer to these as lights out activities. These are activities that you don't have to see anything to really be proficient. It's all about hearing the sounds and duplicating those sounds or acknowledging those sounds or manipulating those sounds. Okay, so a phoneme is a single speech sound. It's the smallest unit of sound within phonology. And these individual phonemes can sound like ah, sh, t, okay? And all of the different 44 phonemes, which we'll talk about in a second. Phonemic awareness is the awareness of these speech sounds, including the ability to isolate specific sounds within a word, identify those sounds, blend those sounds, segment and manipulate those sounds in words. And it focuses only on individual sounds, like I just referred to above in phonemic and phonemes. So an activity in phonemic awareness might sound like, what sounds do you hear in cat? Now turn cat into mat. What word does the sound k, at make? Okay, so phonological awareness is really where students start in kindergarten, and then they start progressing in kindergarten to the end of phonemic awareness, or middle and into the end, and then into first grade, they're finishing and really developing the more code. Second grade turns into advanced code within phonemic awareness, and applying those now sounds to sight and matching them to letters, which is phonics. Okay, so brief little introduction lesson on phonological and phonemic awareness. So the purpose of phonological and phonemic awareness inventory is to identify why students may be struggling to decode even basic CVC words. And CVC stands for consonant, vowel, consonant words with a short vowel in the middle. So cat, lap, sat, these are all CVC words. And in the last session, we talked about administering that basic code knowledge inventory. And if students struggle with the whole thing, this was the next step in that progression. So we want to know, this is going to tell us why they're struggling with those CVC words, something as basic as that. It's also to help students become more proficient with decoding by mastering sounds heard in our language and improve their ability to manipulate those sounds. Okay, it's also going to pinpoint where in the umbrella of phonological awareness that a student may need more support. This is the predecessor to reading. Okay, so the phonological and phonemic awareness inventory can be found in the LIFT kit. It's the third part of LIFT, and it can be found in the complete LIFT administration materials and in the complete LIFT student recording packet. You will need a student recording packet for each student you're administering to. And this inventory is not timed, okay? So setting up for this inventory. The phonological and phonemic awareness inventories are most effective when they are administered one-on-one in a setting where you can truly hear what the student is saying, okay? This inventory especially is all about sounds, right? And so if we want to be able to hear those sounds, we really have to have a quiet environment. Students that need this level of intervention are probably going to be very, they're not going to be very confident about producing these sounds because it's something they're kind of struggling with. So we want to make sure that we have an environment where we can hear exactly what they're saying. To administer the inventory, you will need the student recording sheet from the student recording packet with the questions and prompts listed, and I'll show you that in just a second. And the student will have nothing in front of them, since phonology is the study of sounds, and this inventory is all sound-based. So you're going to have the student recording packet. They don't need anything in front of them. Okay, so administering it. Pages 13 and 14 of the student recording packet contain the directions and prompts to read to students during the administration. You're going to enter the student responses on the line to the left of the prompt, and correct responses are included as well. So let's dive into this to see exactly what this looks like. So here we have the student recording packet, and I told you pages 13 and 14. So let's go there, page 13. Okay, is our phonemic and phonological awareness inventory. It has your directions. It should be administered to any student who has significant gaps in that code knowledge, or if the student has no gaps in code knowledge but does not read fluently. So if they're really trying to go on the inventory, if they're struggling through those words, if they're not fluently reading them, this is another thing we want to do after. Okay, so I'm going to model these are very quick, just in case you have zero familiarity with this. You can kind of see what this looks and sounds like. So that starts with the most basic skills within phonological awareness. Okay, so we're just discriminating between different sounds. So you're going to ask the students, are these sounds the same or different? You're going to do a bell and you're going to tap on the table. They should be able to tell us that they're different, but in the space to the left, you're going to put the student response here. Okay, then we're going to tap on the table and stop and tap on the table. And we're going to ask them, are those sounds the same or different? And again, record their response. Then we're going to progress to counting the number of words. So teacher, how many words do you hear in this sentence? The cat ran, and students should be able to tell us 3. Then you would read the next sentence and the next, recording how many words they say are in each sentence. And of course, again, the number they got correct out of 3 up here. The next skill in the progression is onsets and rhymes. And so we're going to tell the student, tell me the first sound that you hear in each of these words. Lip. So what's the first sound in lip? What's the last part of lip? What's the first sound you hear in mat? What is the last part of mat? So here they should be able to tell us ip, at. So this is onset and rhyme. And then hot. What is the first sound you hear? And the last part, at. Okay. And so if they're producing rhymes later on, they should be able to produce words that rhyme with lip. So they would say lip, hip, fip. It's a nonsense word, but that's what onsets and rhymes are. Then we progress to counting syllables. How many syllables do you hear in each of these words? Run. They should be able to tell us that's one syllable. Eating, 2. Hit, 1. Okay, and again, you put their correct responses here and the total number correct in this section here. Then we progress to blending. And I'm going to be honest, blending and segmenting are probably where, if there's a big breakdown in phonemic and phonological awareness, this is probably where it's going to occur, unless they actually progress down to, we'll get down to in a second, manipulating those phonemes, okay? So I will say some sounds, blend the sounds together and tell me the word that they make, okay? So we would tell the students, and they should tell us that that word is run. They should be able to blend those sounds together to produce the word run. J, e, p, l, a. Okay. P. And then segmenting. Now I will say some words. Tell me all of the words you hear in these words. All the sounds, excuse me, you hear in these words. So I would say rug, and we're asking the students to say r, g, because we want to know now the sounds. Now we're segmenting. We're taking the word, the sounds in the word apart, excuse me, or the phonemes in the words apart. Then we're going to ask them, what sounds do you hear in like? And they should be able to tell us, ooh, I, k, sheep, sh, e, p. Okay. Then we progress to rhyming. I'm going to say some words. Tell me if the words rhyme or don't rhyme. So jug, hug, and they would tell us hopefully that they rhyme, but we would again put their response here. Sip, sit, those don't rhyme. Cheese, ship, don't rhyme, okay? It's really important, okay, in this inventory especially, that we pay very close attention to our diction and how we're producing these sounds, so that we can get an accurate measure of how they're doing. And in just a moment, I'm going to give you a resource that you can refer to if you're not familiar with how to produce the phonemes, okay? Now I will give you a word. Tell me a word that rhymes. So we would say lit, and hopefully they should be able to produce something like fit, mit, something like that. And we would do the same for those three. Then we're progressing to phoneme matching. What words sound alike? And we would read this list for them. Men, sit, sap. And hopefully they should tell us that sit and sap sound alike, okay? Then we progress to phoneme isolation, the ability to isolate a certain phoneme within a word. And it starts, everything in this inventory progresses from simpler to more complex, or basic to more complex. So in isolating the initial sound is the first step in phoneme isolation. So we start there. What's the first sound in map? And they should tell us, okay. Then we go to the final sound, phoneme isolation, final sound, last sound. What's the last sound in sat? And they should tell us t. Then the most difficult in phoneme isolation is that medial or middle sound that they hear. What's the middle sound in sat? And they should tell us ah, okay? Then we come to phoneme blending. What word do these sounds make? Ah, t, hot. They should tell us hot. What sounds do you hear in hot? Ah, t. They should tell us the sounds now, right? Phoneme segmentation. Now phoneme manipulation is the most is the most challenging skill within phonemic awareness, okay? So phoneme manipulation, the ability to manipulate these sounds inside of words and create new words. So we first start, right, like I said before, we start with initial or first sound. So say mat without the sound. Okay, so we take away we should just get at, okay? Phoneme manipulation, final or last sound. Say mat without the t. So they should just be able to tell us mat. Okay. And then lastly, phoneme manipulation substitution, the ability to substitute one sound for another to produce a different word. Say pig. Okay. Now change the p in pig to f, and they should be able to tell us the correct word is now fig. Okay. So once again, we're just putting the correct, what they're really saying on the left. We're putting the totals on the right, on this top part, and then you're going to transfer that. Remember, in the student recording packet, we have the second page in the student recording packet is the profile at a glance. We started with the fluency screener. We have their scores up here for that. Then last week, we talked about the code knowledge inventory, and you recorded their scores here for that. And we had our little checklist. And then today, we are here. We are at the phonemic awareness inventory. So we would transfer those scores that we did on pages 13 and 14 to here, because remember this, the first 2 pages or 3 pages in here are a great resource to have on file for these students, especially students who have not been identified yet. If we need to bring, if the student has no label, and they're struggling with this, we definitely need to bring them through the SBLC process. This recording packet is a great tool to bring up in there. Great to share with classroom teachers, parents, to show them where their child or student is really struggling with or needs more support within reading, within the basics of reading. Okay, so you would record their scores here. And remember, when you click on, I'm gonna come back to this because we're gonna go back to our presentation, but when you click on these, it brings you to the interventions if they're struggling with that particular skill. Okay, let's jump back into our presentation. Okay, so scoring it, I showed you just now how to score it. You enter the total for each section on the line. So 1 out of 1 or 2 out of 3. The scores for each component of this inventory will align with the intervention and activities in the library. So some next steps. We're going to review the errors made in the inventory and how students scored on each category to determine what interventions to start with. Okay, so further developing phonemic and phonological awareness. You want to identify where students struggle with the inventory to choose that activity. The inventory, like I said, was structured more basic to more complex. Okay, so if a student struggled somewhere at the beginning of the inventory, you want to start there with interventions before progressing all the way down to, let's say, phoneme manipulation or phoneme isolation. Okay, advance your own knowledge of phonemes and graphemes in the English language. And so a great place to do that is this link for this video here at the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy that shows the mouth when producing the phonemes and the sounds that those phonemes make. Okay, let's get out just real quick. I just want to show you. It's a great resource. And she really goes through all 44 of the phonemes in the English language, exactly what your mouth should look like and exactly what those should sound like. Most, if not like just most, really most teachers, especially in 6 through 12, have not had training on how to produce the different letter sounds, the different phonemes. Okay, so it's really important if you're doing work inside of this that you can A, identify the correct sound, and B, produce the correct sound so that if you're trying to remediate or intervene, you can do so correctly. Okay, so this is a great resource to use. Let's jump back in. Okay, so phonology and phoneme intervention in small groups. Small groups should be no more than 4 students, and that within phoneme and phonemic and phonological awareness, that's on the heavier side. If we can have less than 4, that's even better. Students should be grouped according to the skills that you are intervening on. Okay, so students that need segmenting practice are grouped together, phoneme manipulation are grouped together, and so on. You should not have a ton of students, especially at the secondary level, that need this kind of intervention, especially if they're not already identified. Okay, someone with dyslexia may need intervention here for quite some time before they progress. Okay, but you should not have a lot of students within this level of intervention. Okay, start students in groups based on their most basic need. Remember, I said start at the beginning of that inventory and progress through it. Blending or segmenting and progressing to manipulation if that's what they need. Explain to students the purpose of the intervention and explain the rationale in terms they can understand prior to starting on a new skill. So if you have an 8th grader and they're struggling with phonemic awareness, it's really important that you tell that student, hey, Joy, I want to just talk to you about this this is how you scored on the code knowledge inventory. So we're going to take this one step further to see how you're hearing and producing sound so we can help you read better. This is really going to make a difference in your ability to read and comprehend text inside of your 8th grade classroom. Okay, it's really important that you kind of break that down for them so they know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and they can really buy into the process. Feel free to include manipulatives whenever possible to diversify activities for students. Remember, this is a sound-based activity, so you're not going to have any writing of letters or anything like that on whiteboards. That's going to be for the code knowledge. But you could have poppers where students pop out how many sounds they hear in something. This was one way to make it more creative, especially in the upper elementary grades. Okay, so phonemic and phoneme and phonology intervention continued. Other groups or students that are not in your teacher group should be working on an independent assignment that they will be held accountable for while you are pulling these students. Be sure to track student progress on the trackers within the interventions, and I'll show you that. And share the progress data with the students so that they can see their own progress, or even better, let them track their own progress. This is so meaningful, especially students, if they've been struggling on these kinds of skills and they've made it to 8th and 9th grade, if they're able to finally track and see where they're making progress, you're giving them hope, you're helping them buy in, and they're going to be more willing to engage in this kind of activity. Some students will progress faster than others. As students master the skill, feel free to push them to the next level group. So meaning if they are progressing with blending and segmenting, push them to the next group. You can take them out of group and put them in the phoneme manipulation group if you have one of those. If a student is progressing slower, it doesn't mean it isn't working. Dyslexic students may need 5 times as much or more practice with this skill than other students will. It just takes more time for that skill to embed itself than a student who does not have dyslexia. Okay, so before I get into the closure, I just want to make sure you understand how to access the interventions. So when you're in the student recording packet and you click on them, it's going to take you to the library. Okay, and in the library, the very top has the diagnostic tools. Okay, and then we're going to come right here because this is what we just administered: phonemic awareness, phonological awareness. That's the inventory we just administered. And when I'm looking at my score sheet, okay, I noticed that the students really struggled with, I'm starting more basic to more complex, right? So maybe they made it all the way through phonological awareness. They were able to do onsets and rhymes and the number of syllables and the number of words they hear in a sentence, but maybe they really got stuck on blending. I'm going to come to blending, download that, and we're going to do this activity with the student. Okay, and these are very spelled out, guys. They have a rationale for why they're doing that particular intervention. It has the materials, which are very, very basic. It has a description of the activity, and then it has trackers on almost all of them. Some of them require anecdotal notes instead of a tracker, but they're very few. Most of them have a tracker. And this is really important because when progress monitoring a student, if a student falls here, within especially 6 to 12, grade 6 to 12, this is probably a tier 3 student. So we need pretty regular progress monitoring, and these sheets can be used for that. Okay. Just want to make sure y'all know how to access that. So in closure, phonological and phonemic awareness is the predecessor of the ability to decode or read. This has to happen before they can match sounds to letters. They have to be able to understand those sounds and manipulate those sounds before they can match the letter to it. The phonological and phonemic awareness inventory in LIFT allows teachers to pinpoint exactly where gaps exist in a student's ability to hear and manipulate sounds. The LIFT kit offers over 70 intervention activities based on the student need identified in the diagnostic. And this is the most important one: 5 to 10 minutes of repeated small group instruction on a particular skill in phonological awareness can close foundational gaps in students and produce more fluent readers. Any questions or comments, as always, please don't hesitate to email us at louisianaliteracy@la.gov because we would love to answer your questions. And be sure to tune in every Wednesday at 3:30 so that you can see the next part of this double series, which is the content literacy library in action. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and thank you so much for tuning in.